The film opens in Rhode Island, where a limousine is pulling up next to a bus stop. When the rear door window is lowered, we meet our protagonist, Lloyd Christmas, who asks a girl at the stop for directions to the medical school. He's supposed to give a lecture there and his driver is lost. The girl explains to him how to get there with a heavy accent, which Lloyd compliments. She tells him she's from Austria, and completely misunderstanding, Lloyd speaks again, faking an Australian accent and slang instead. The girl obviously is turned off by this, so she turns him down, and Lloyd pulls up the window again, only to put on the driver's cap and move back to the wheel. As Lloyd gets back to the road, he drives by a fast food joint where his best friend, Harry Dunn, is getting some food back to his van. Both he and the vehicle are dressed up as dogs. As he hits the road too, he feeds sandwiches to the dogs he's groomed. His driving gets reckless when he gets a call saying that he's late to the show he's supposed to be taking the dogs to, which causes the dogs to slide all over the van. Meanwhile, Lloyd is arriving at a very fancy house. After parking the limo, he knocks on the door in a rather obnoxious way, and it's opened by his client Mary Swanson, whom he immediately gets infatuated with. A moment later, when both are in the limo on their way to the airport, Lloyd tries to get a conversation going. Mary mentions she's going to Aspen, and Lloyd comments on him and Harry saving money to start their own pet shop that specializes in worm farms. Mary is incredibly tense during the whole trip, which she blames on flying nerves, but it's obviously a lie. Back to Harry. After some very intense driving, he finally makes it to the dog show, where one of the dog owners is extremely worried about her pet's looks, but Harry promises he's groomed them all perfectly. When he opens the door, however, all the dogs are covered in condiments. In the meantime, Lloyd and Mary make it to the airport. After giving her all her bags, Lloyd offers Mary a hug, which she awkwardly takes but doesn't reciprocate. Lloyd returns to his limo and Mary enters the airport, where henchmen Joe Mentalino and JP Shea are getting ready to pick up the suitcase Mary will be leaving near the escalator. Outside, Lloyd is driving slowly in order to be able to look at Mary through the airport's glass walls, which causes him to hit another car. This delay allows him to see Mary leaving the suitcase behind, and since he thinks she's forgetting it by accident, he runs out of the limo and enters the airport to snatch the suitcase right under the henchman's noses. He then tries to take it back to Mary, for which he enters the boarding area, but since the plane has already left, Lloyd falls out of the jetway. Some hours later, Lloyd and Harry are returning to their apartment in a rather humble neighborhood, and they've been followed by the henchmen, who think they're working for someone powerful. We see Mental is taking pills for his ulcer. Inside the apartment, Lloyd and Harry share the same news: they've both lost their jobs. Harry asks Lloyd about the briefcase. He tells him it's a love memento and that he can't get it open. Their chat is interrupted by the henchmen knocking on their door, and after checking who it is through the peephole, they reach the conclusion they're gas debt collectors, so they take the suitcase and escape through the window. The henchmen force their way inside, and when they don't find the briefcase, they decide to leave a message by decapitating Harry's parakeet. Night has fallen by the time Harry and Lloyd return to their place after spending their whole day job hunting. Harry goes back to the apartment with the suitcase while Lloyd goes to the store, promising to only get the bare essentials with their last money. He ends up buying a lot of knickknacks, and when he stops by a newspaper box, he accidentally leaves his wallet inside while retrieving the magazine. He doesn't have change to open the box again, so when he sees an old lady passing by, he asks her to watch over his things while he goes back to the store to break $1. A moment later, he returns to the apartment and tells Harry the old lady robbed him blind. Harry mentions his parakeet died, and this makes Lloyd snap. Tired of the dump they're living in, he wants to leave and go to Aspen. Harry turns down the idea when he realizes Lloyd only wants to go after Mary, but after a heartfelt speech from his friend, he accepts. They hit the road the next day, where Lloyd tells Harry that he got some extra money from selling the dead parakeet to a blind kid. Meanwhile, back in their building, the henchmen are visiting again, only to find a note on the door apologizing to the gas man. This makes them think the friends are pros that have been following them, because they know about Mental's ulcer. They decide to follow them to Aspen. Back to Harry and Lloyd, they've stopped at a diner to eat. When Harry accidentally spills some salt, Lloyd tells him it's bad luck and he should counter it by tossing salt over his shoulder. Lloyd throws the entire shaker and hits a man, Seabass, who angrily comes over to the table and spits at Harry's burger as revenge. The guys finish their meal but are still frustrated by what happened, so Lloyd gets an idea. They go to Seabass' table to apologize and offer to buy beers for Seabass and his friends, which they accept. However, when they talk to the waitress, they tell her Seabass has agreed to pay their bill, and when the waitress looks at his table, the men nod, thinking she's wondering about the beers. That's enough for her to put their bill under Seabass' name. Shortly afterward, the guys are successfully driving away from the diner as Seabass, his friends and the waitresses try to go after them to no avail. Back on the road, Lloyd asks Harry to pull over when possible because he needs to pee. Harry refuses, since he thinks that would give Seabass the chance to catch up with him, and tells Lloyd to pee into some empty beer bottles. He ends up filling quite a few of them. A motor cop sees them drive by and follows them to ask them to pull over. After parking, he asks Harry for his license and notices the open beer bottles, which are illegal to have in a car. He tells them to hand them over, and as soon as he grabs one, the cop takes a sip, not listening to the guy's warnings. The taste is obviously disgusting, so the cop lets them go before he retches on the road. We then cut to Aspen, where Mary is chatting with her father Carl Swanson and her stepmother Helen Swanson. She doesn't understand how the money she left at the airport hasn't reached the kidnappers yet. At that moment, a friend of the family arrives, Nicholas Andre. He thinks they should cancel the preservation gala they were planning, but Carl disagrees. They should continue to act normally, not to alert the authorities and the press, otherwise the kidnappers could do something drastic. Meanwhile, night has fallen on the road. Harry sleeps while Lloyd drives and daydreams about Mary. He imagines himself arriving at Aspen, getting together with Mary after returning the briefcase to her, impressing her friends with jokes, fighting some waiters at a restaurant for her honor, and taking Mary to his room to make love to her. He's snapped out of it by an incoming truck that he dodges just in time. They decide to spend the night at a love hotel, which Harry tells Lloyd it brings back bad memories about an ex-girlfriend that left him for another guy. He doesn't know whom, but Lloyd's faces tell us it was him. Outside the hotel, we find the henchman. Mendel is on the phone with his boss, who turns out to be Nicholas. While he talks to him, a stranger keeps asking him to hurry up and free the phone, so Mendel punches him through the booth glass before promising Nicholas he'll get that briefcase back. The next morning, the guys go back to the road and find Mendel next to his car pretending to be a hitchhiker while Shay hides to follow them later. They accept to give him a ride, which means Mendel ends up sitting between them and being incredibly annoyed by their bickering, weird noises and bad singing. He's about to take out his gun when the guys pick up even more hitchhikers, so Mendel has no other choice but to endure. Some hours later, they stop at another diner, where Mendel convinces the guys to try the chili papers. While they freak out over how spicy they are, Mendel goes outside to call Nicholas and tell him he'll kill the pair with rat poison. Then he returns to his table, where the guys have secretly put a bunch of chili papers on his burger. After discovering their possession of the briefcase is a coincidence, he bites the burger, causing him to react adversely because of his ulcer. Twitching on the floor, Mendel asks for his pills, which Harry searches for while Lloyd tries to give CPR. Harry grabs the wrong bottle, however, and ends up giving Mendel the rat poison, effectively killing him. The guys rush out of the diner before the cops arrive. They talk to the waitress and find out they must follow a sheepdog car. Lloyd and Harry continue their road trip, and when night falls, they stop to at a gas station. While Lloyd goes to the bathroom, Harry refills the gas tank and chats with Beth Jordan, who is parked next to him and is also going to Aspen. He's so distracted by her that he spills gas on his legs and the floor. Meanwhile, Lloyd finds out the stall he's at is used for intimacy and someone arrives right in time for it. It's Seabass. We cut back to Harry, who is still chatting with Beth and lends her a match to light her cigarette. He throws the match to the floor and accidentally starts a fire on his wet pants, which makes him snap at Beth, so she leaves. Harry runs to the bathroom, where Seabass is making Lloyd fall to his knees to use his mouth, but Harry knocks him out when he pushes the stall door open to put his burning leg in the toilet water. Moments later, we see the police waiting for them on the road to Colorado. But Lloyd has taken over the driving and he's too distracted to notice he's taking the wrong turn, which at least helps him avoid the cops. In the morning, Harry wakes up and finds out about Lloyd's mistake. They stop the van and have an argument. Harry is angry because they have no money for gas or food, so he decides to leave Lloyd and walk back home. Some hours later, he's suddenly approached by Lloyd riding a minibike he traded for the van in town. This is enough for Harry to forgive him and climb on the bike, resuming their trip to Aspen. They make it to Aspen a couple of days later and they're almost freezing. They want to return the briefcase, but Lloyd doesn't know where Mary lives and has no way to find out. When night falls, the guys are at a park, trying to stay warm next to a fire. When Lloyd reveals he's been wearing an extra pair of gloves and didn't share, Harry gets angry and decides to get rid of the briefcase. Lloyd fights him for it and in the struggle, the briefcase falls and finally opens, revealing tons of cash inside. The guys decide there's nothing wrong with borrowing just a few bucks and leaving IOUs promising to pay them back later. But they end up going crazy with the expenses. They choose a presidential suite at a hotel, buy a fancy car plus expensive yet ridiculous clothes, and overtip the hotel employees. While enjoying the luxury of their room, they find out about Mary and her gala in the newspaper and decide to attend. After a montage of them getting groomed and buying weird suits, they arrive at the gala, where they pay Nicholas extra money and accidentally spray his eyes to get in. After they're gone, Shay approaches Nicholas and tells them those are the guys that killed Mendel. Lloyd and Harry go to the bar and have a drink while on the stage. Carl introduces the latest species his preservation will be housing, the snow owl. After the presentation is over, they finally see Mary, but Lloyd is too nervous to talk to her so he sends Harry to do the talking for him. Harry approaches Mary and after chit-chatting about animals, he tries to introduce her to Lloyd, but Helen interrupts them. She's very amused by his weird suit, and since Mary hasn't left the house for a while, she arranges a date for her and Harry the next day. Harry accepts and goes back to Lloyd, telling him the date is for him. Lloyd decides to celebrate this by opening a bottle of champagne, and the cork he shoots ends up killing one of the owls. The next day, Nicholas and Shay come to the conclusion that the dead owl was revenge for the parakeet and a message. Meanwhile, the guys are ready to go out. Harry tries to make Lloyd change his mind about Mary, and when he can't, he gives him the wrong meeting place. While Lloyd goes to the hotel bar to wait, Harry joins Mary at the slopes. They get on the ski lift, and when he sees frost on the pole, Harry tries to lick it and gets his tongue stuck on it. Back in the bar, Lloyd is starting to accept he's been stood up, so the bartender gives him a pity beer as Beth suddenly shows up and sits next to him. In the meantime, Mary pulls Harry's head to unstick his tongue from the pole, then they have some fun together playing in the snow. We cut to the bar again, where Lloyd is getting sick of Beth's whining, so he asks the bartender if he knows Mary. The bartender tells him where she lives, so Lloyd leaves the place to visit her. Some moments later, Harry and Mary are arriving at her place. She's enjoyed herself a lot, so she asks Harry to pick her up tonight, which he accepts. After she enters her house and Harry leaves on the car, we discover Lloyd saw it all and is hurt by the betrayal. Later in the evening, in their hotel room, Lloyd tells Harry he's been stood up, and Harry pretends to be outraged. But suddenly he gets an idea for another lie and tells Lloyd that Mary probably meant 10 p.m., not a.m. Lloyd pretends to accept this, and when he hears Harry is leaving for the movies, he prepares a toast by slipping laxative into Harry's cup. Harry drinks it without suspicion. Harry gets in his car and drives to Mary's, already feeling his stomach gurgling. Mary lets him in and asks her to give him a minute, during which he cannot take it anymore and decides to go to the bathroom to relieve himself of his diarrhea. Mary knocks on the door and tells him the toilet is broken, but Harry panics and tells her she's just shaving. While waiting for him to be done, Mary hears the doorbell and goes to open the door. It's Lloyd, who has finally come to tell her he has the briefcase and invites her to come over to his hotel room to retrieve it. Mary accepts, so she goes to tell Harry, who is desperately trying to fix the toilet, that she must cancel their date because something important came up. Lloyd and Mary take the minibike back to the hotel. Once they make it to his room, he returns the briefcase to her. Mary is very touched by the gesture and thanks him with a kiss on his cheek. After cutting to the hotel lobby to show us Nicholas and Shay have also arrived, we return to Lloyd, who is practicing his love confession while Mary is in the bathroom. When she comes out, Lloyd tells her he likes her after stumbling over his words. Mary tells him his chances aren't good, and after Lloyd asks her to be specific, she says he has 1 in a million chance. This makes Lloyd think he does have a chance. They're interrupted by Nicholas, who reveals the kidnapped person is Mary's husband Bobby. Lloyd is hurt by this, but he doesn't have time to complain, because Nicholas is threatening them with a gun. Meanwhile, in the hotel lobby, we see Harry arrive and coming across Beth. Back in the room, Mary is upset to find out Nicholas was the one who kidnapped her husband. When Lloyd mentions reimbursing, Nicholas makes them open the briefcase and discovers all the money has been spent and replaced with IOUs. A moment later, Harry enters the room and discovers Mary and Lloyd have been handcuffed to the bed. Nicholas threatens him with the gun too and throws him on the bed with them. While Nicholas makes a phone call to buy a plane ticket, Lloyd and Harry argue over betrayals. Turns out Harry had always known Lloyd was the one his ex cheated on him with. Their bickering gets on Nicholas' nerves, so he comes over and asks who wants to die first. Lloyd offers himself first, but Harry jumps in and says it should be him, which Lloyd accepts when he hears how much fun he had with Mary. Nicholas shoots Harry and for a moment they believe him to be dead, but suddenly he stands up and shoots Nicholas, though he fails. Nicholas is about to shoot again when the FBI suddenly bursts into the room, led by Beth, who turns out to be an agent that has been following them around pretending to be an airhead. Back when she saw Harry in the lobby, she filled him in and gave him a bulletproof vest and a gun to pull off this plan. Moments later, everyone is outside the hotel. Nicholas and Shay get arrested, and Mary gets to reunite with her husband Bobby Swanson. While seeing them together, Lloyd daydreams about shooting Bobby, but plays nice when Mary brings him over to introduce them. The next day, the guys are walking on the road, trying to find a way home and wondering when they'll catch a break. A bus filled with gorgeous girls in bikinis suddenly stops next to them, and the girls tell them they're looking for 2 guys that will go with them to rub oil on their bodies while they travel around the country on a bikini tour. The guys tell them they're in luck because they can find men in a town very close by, the direction of which Harry points at. The now confused girls leave then, and the guys barely take another few steps before Lloyd realizes what they've done. They run after the bus and ask it to stop, only for Lloyd to tell them Harry has pointed it the wrong way. Lloyd points in the correct direction, then lets the girls leave again. The movie ends with the 2 friends walking down the road, bickering. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.